Hello, my unraveled friends. We need to talk. Mm-hmm. Case coming up, trial coming up. We've got to talk about it. I'm going to follow it. There has been so much happening. Here I go again with Stephen Stearns. Pissed me off. Brian Koberger sentencing, unreal. If I could have streamed that, if I didn't have to be at work and I could have streamed those victims' families just letting Koberger meet Miss Olivia, fierce, held nothing back, unreal, gave me chills. And he's also gone behind bars for the rest of his life, along with his scummy little friend, Stephen Stearns. They're not actually friends, guys. They don't know each other, but they're winning. I'm happy they've gone away. I know I said it a little bit in my last video, but geez, the last couple weeks, I don't know. I don't know if work's just been crazy or I've just been tired. I don't know. I was a little under the weather. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Here I am and here you are, and I'm so happy you're here. And we're here together. Here. Here we are. All right. Listen, this case is probably going to make everybody quite angry, as it does me. Every single time I try to, like, because I keep researching. The case is actually, ongoing. Trial is coming up. I don't think we're exactly sure when. We can check again just to make sure we're super accurate. But February 2025, right, in this beautiful sun-drenched landscape, Pinellas County, Florida, a beautiful 16-year-old girl disappeared. Her name was Miranda Corsette. You guys heard of her? If you haven't, buckle up. We need to be here for her. I'm already feeling flushed just thinking about going into it, but here we go. Miranda Corsette was, like I said, 16 years old. She was a young mother already, believe it or not. Her parents were both gone too soon. She was just a teenage girl who was navigating this incredibly difficult path. Her disappearance initially kind of blended into this painful history of running away, right? But this time was different. This time, Miranda didn't come home. And this is the story of what happened to Miranda. This is a story of manipulation and unimaginable cruelty that unfolded behind the closed doors of a duplex on 27th Avenue North in Pinellas County, Florida. It is a case about the predators who lived there and the silent witnesses who failed to act and the systemic cracks that a young girl fell through. Guys, let's unravel. And so, as always, to kind of understand the tragedy that befell Miranda Corsette, we really have to first understand the life that she was living. She was just 16 years old, and yet she carried the responsibilities of a mother to an 11-month-old baby. Both of her parents were deceased, leaving her in the primary care of her grandmother in Gulfport, Florida. Miranda was also being homeschooled, right? So all of this is just kind of a life that suggests a degree of isolation from the typical social structures of like a regular high school girl, right? Her life was marked by just a lot of significant instability and a lot of vulnerability. Police were familiar with Miranda, unfortunately. They noted that she was a frequent runaway with a history of mental health challenges and sometimes a little substance abuse. So, this pattern of running away, leaving and then returning had sort of become, unfortunately, a very tragically normalized part of Miranda's existence. Her grandmother, who was the person that was closest to her in this world, confirmed this pattern. Commander, let me see, Mary Farrand, okay, she was the acting police chief for Gulfport, explained the family's perspective by saying, quote, she said she normally comes home, so she doesn't report her missing every time she leaves. She just didn't come back in a timely manner this time, unquote. This history created this kind of fatal blind spot, right? The very behavior that signaled Miranda's distress and cry for help had become so routine at this point that it actually masked the mortal danger that she was in when she vanished for this last time. This delay in reporting her missing, right? So from the time that she left until her grandmother had officially reported her missing on February 24th, this delay was not born out of neglect on the grandmother's part. And I know there's been a lot of comments and speculation about this, but it really was more born of this pattern that had until then always ended with Miranda's return. But this delay also provided her captors with a very critical, uninterrupted window of nearly 10 days to enact their horrific plans. Is a period during which the outside world assumed that Miranda was simply on another one of her outings, but that she was going to come home. So the path to Miranda's murder began on a day that's actually here. It's actually meant to celebrate connection. Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025. It was on this day that Miranda was contacted and lured by 35-year-old Stephen Gress through a social media dating app. Reports did later specify that the app was Grindr, which is a platform predominantly used by like the LGBTQ community. The use of speculating. The use of this kind of app by Gress, a heterosexual man, to target a teenage girl, to me, represents a very bizarre and predatory act of deception, exploiting a platform where a young, vulnerable girl might have felt safer or less likely to be targeted by men like him on purpose. Feel like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, okay. So the sequence of events that followed were this. Stephen Gress drove to Miranda's grandmother's home, picked her up, and then took her back to the duplex that he shared with his partner. And after spending the day with him, Gress actually did return Miranda home later that evening. The interaction could have ended there. Strange, but fleeting encounter. However, the very next day, February 15th, Miranda actually, according to reports, Miranda actually returned to Gress's home on her own accord. And unfortunately, she would remain there, captive, until her death. She would never see her own home or her child or her grandmother ever again. So this duplex on 27th Avenue North in St. Petersburg, this was not a quiet home. Okay. Neighbors knew very well of arguing and fighting just all the time. Police had been called to this residence multiple times. Living inside were Stephen Gress and his partner, his domestic partner, Michelle Brandis. Two gems, peaches they are. To the outside world, they were just another like toxic, troubled couple. right? But inside their home, I mean, just a monstrous reality was taking shape. These two individuals, Stephen Gress and Michelle Brandis. At the time of the murder, Stephen Gress was 35 years old. He was born on July 11th, 1989 in Michigan. His booking records from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office describe him as a white male, 5 feet, 7 inches tall, weighing 155 pounds with blue eyes and brown hair. These records are extensive. He's not a newbie to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office by any means. He resided at the St. Petersburg duplex where the crime took place. His partner, 37-year-old Michelle Brandis, is consistently identified in police reports and news coverage as his domestic partner, his living girlfriend. She lived with Gress at this duplex and, according to investigators, was present, complicit, and cooperated during the entire ordeal of Miranda's kidnapping, torture, and ultimate unaliving. So this duplex where Brandis and Gress resided was, I mean, to put it mildly, it was known as a very troublesome spot for law enforcement long before Miranda Corsette ever stepped foot inside that home. The environment was characterized by constant conflict and instability. Police call logs that were obtained by news outlets actually revealed that officers from the St. Petersburg Police Department were dispatched to that home 7 different times between January 1st this year, 2025, Gress's arrest in March 2025. Once a week, law enforcement is having to come out to this property to intervene in some way, shape, or form. The nature of these calls painted, I mean, just a very clear picture of a very volatile household. They also ranged from general disturbances and domestic quarrels to much more serious allegations of domestic battery and assault, as well as at least one welfare check, which I think, well, we'll get into the welfare check later. The property owner, his name was David Horton. He corroborated this by stating that there was arguing and fighting and that they would just do that. Like, it was just a known thing, right? That this household was always in some sort of an uproar. No peace for the neighbors. Can you imagine? I'm moving. David Horton noted that the tenant living above Gress and Brandis had become so concerned by the disturbances that she herself had called police on at least one occasion. And then one neighbor felt extremely uneasy living next door to the couple, and they described Stephen Gress as an, quote, intimidating fellow, unquote, and expressed a sense of relief after his arrest in March. These are not good neighbors, guys. No. This documented history of violence and domestic turmoil established the backdrop for the horror that would soon unfold, right? A very private world of aggression that was about to turn its focus onto a captive and helpless teenage girl. You guys ever wear your hair up for so long that like you start to get a headache? It was like, that's what I felt like it was doing. It was like pulling my face back. It hurt. No? Okay. Anyway, listen. So for over a week, Miranda Corsette was held captive inside of that duplex, right? The catalyst? The catalyst for all of this horror that followed was something sickeningly trivial, according to Gress and Brandis. You know what it was? It was a piece of jewelry. It was a ring, a little ring. And for that, according to them, a 16-year-old girl was subjected to days of escalating brutality that ended in the taking of her life. So, according to law enforcement and court documents, The descent into torture began on February 20th, right? 5 days after Miranda returned to the duplex. On that day, a dispute erupted when Gress and Brandeis accused the 16-year-old girl of stealing a piece of jewelry from them. Him, really, Gress. It was Stephen Gress. His interrogation footage, he just goes on and on and on and on and on about the stupid fucking ring. He just cannot get past this, according to him. This is just like a do not pass go type thing for him. Like, no, locked in on this ring that they were accusing Miranda of taking. This accusation, right, whether genuinely believed by them or completely fabricated, this is what served as the pretext for all of the violence that followed. In a press conference, the St. Petersburg Police Chief Anthony Holloway detailed the consequences of this dispute by saying, from the 20th through the 24th, she was beaten and tortured because they could not find this piece of jewelry, unquote. The triviality of this motive, to me, again, I'm no psychiatrist, psychologist, clinician. I'm none of this, right? I'm just a girl who reads about this stuff all the time on the internet. But it really just reveals a much darker truth about these two human beings, in my opinion. This was not about retrieving property. Okay, to me, what they did to Miranda was about exercising absolute power and sadistic control. The level of violence was grotesquely disproportionate to the offense, right? Suggesting to me that this whole accusation about this missing ring was merely a very convenient excuse to just unleash cruelty. I do have my opinions after reading more and watching the interrogation footage about who I think maybe we'll get in. Okay, guys, sorry to leave you on that. We'll get into this. We'll get into it. We'll get there. Ultimately, what I'm saying is that the violence was the goal, right? It wasn't a means to an end. It was the whole point. And this was made to me even more apparent by a very deeply critical and disturbing detail that emerged later in the investigation. Police found no evidence that Miranda ever even took this ring. And Michelle Brandeis herself actually reportedly claimed to have later found it in Gress's car. She just went to his car one day, which had been looked in multiple times before, by the way. And there was the ring, and she brought it to him and was like, hey, look what I found. Okay, girl. Okay. The entire justification for days of torture and a brutal murder was, in all likelihood, and only in my opinion, a complete fucking fabrication. Made up. The final days of Miranda Corsette's life, as detailed in court affidavits, were filled with just unimaginable suffering. She was held captive for more than 7 days, during which she was repeatedly and brutally beaten, and her death, which investigators believe occurred sometime between the 20th and the 24th, was determined to be from suffocation. And the method employed was quite uniquely barbaric and really speaks again to this, what I would consider profound sadism of her killers. According to the arrest affidavit, Gress and Brandeis suffocated Miranda by forcing a billiard ball into her mouth and then wrapping her face in plastic wrap. This is such a slow and absolutely terrifying way to leave this world. During court hearing for Stephen Gress, I think this was like one of his earlier hearings, the judge read from the charging documents, right? And he stated that Gress, quote, repeatedly beat the victim while holding her captive for 7 days and eventually suffocated her by wrapping plastic wrap around her face, unquote. As the case developed, the two perpetrators, as they always do, thinking about my last case, Karina Cooper and Houston Denker, what do? They flip on each other. Boy, oh boy, quick. They flip. I didn't do it. He did it. I didn't do anything. She did it. that kind of thing. Oh, instantly. In his statement to police, Stephen Gress attempted to shift the blame for the final act. Now, in his interrogation footage, guys, should we watch it? Should we watch it? I think I could probably find some whole clips. I put in a FOIA request, but it's been weeks and I haven't gotten anything. I got the arrest affidavits for both of them from St. Petersburg police, but I have not gotten the interrogation footage that I requested. But I do know some YouTubers who have gotten it, and maybe we will just watch. You guys got to see this. So Stephen did admit to some really horrible shit and really, I mean, even the detective conducting the interview was like, dude, what? But what he says happened is that yes, I admit to doing all this stuff because I really wanted my ring back, but I didn't take her life. Michelle did that. Michelle was the one who committed this final fatal act, right? He claimed that it was Michelle who shoved the billiard ball down Miranda's throat and wrapped the plastic wrap around his face, and that he actually tried to poke holes in the plastic, but he wasn't able to do it fast enough to allow her to breathe. And yeah, so this actually becomes like the cornerstone of their they call them antagonistic defenses. We'll get into that in a bit. Fucking sickos, man. So now I want to go into the other part of this case that just, it pisses me off, right? One of the most chilling aspects of this entire case to me is not just what two people did to her, but what a lot of other people did not do. As she was being beaten and tortured, there was a small circle of people who knew what was happening to her. When it was happening to her, they received evidence, and they all remained silent. And this fucking infuriates me. Miranda was not just failed by her captors, she was failed by a community of witnesses. Okay. This is a network of knowledge of what was happening to this girl. The torture and the murder of Miranda Corsette did not happen in a vacuum, shielded from the outside world completely. A 25-page search warrant affidavit later obtained by, I think, the Tampa Bay Times is what I wrote down. It revealed a very shocking truth. In the week leading up to her death, at least 6 different people saw or knew that the teenager was being held captive and tortured inside that duplex, yet not a single one of them called 911. Not a single one. This was not a case of neighbors hearing muffled sounds through the walls and choosing not to get involved. No, that's not what this was. The knowledge that was held by these witnesses was very direct and very unambiguous. Stephen Gress was brazenly open about his actions. He actually spoke to one neighbor who saw Miranda at the apartment, telling them, quote, "This little bitch stole my ring and won't give it back, so I've been beating her ass," unquote. This was a direct confession of assault and false imprisonment, and it was met with silence. The circle of knowledge extended to within the apartment itself. A woman who lived in that first floor apartment with Gress and Brandeis was also later interviewed by police. Her name was Pam. She provided a very horrifying eyewitness account describing in detail how the couple suffocated the teenage girl. Her testimony also revealed that she was present afterward. And you know what she stated? She stated that the three of them, Gress, Brandeis, and Pam, drove Miranda's body to the dismemberment location and then all went out afterwards, like for a fun night to celebrate Michelle Brandy's birthday. Fun time all together. Such a good night. You know what I mean? The failure to report was therefore not just a simple case of like avoiding trouble, right? For some, it was a very conscious decision to just completely ignore very direct evidence of a kidnapping, a torture in progress, and for at least one witness, it involved complicity after the fact. No one did anything. No one did anything. The most damning evidence of this very widespread moral failure involves Stephen Gress's own family. Yes, you heard me. He not only confessed his crimes verbally, but documented them visually and shared them. According to the affidavit, 3 people, which was a group that included Stephen Gress's own fucking mother, his own mother, later admitted to police that he had sent them photographs of Miranda during her captivity. Ay, ay. These were not like some blurry. What is that? I can't. What? What is that? These were not that. These were not that. They showed Miranda nude, bruised, and in increasingly worse physical condition. One report states that her condition in the photos that Gress was circulating was so severe that she was almost unrecognizable. How am I saying those words? Photos that Gress was circulating. And Miranda was unrecognizable in those photos. The act of a son sending images of his tortured captive to his own mother, and that mother allegedly failing to report this to authorities. I don't even know. This is just a haunting. It is a haunting breakdown of human fucking decency. I'm sorry I'm loving the F word so much in this episode, but Jesus, it really transforms the narrative here from a story about 2 killers, right, into a much like wider, like a much broader story about this very corrosive nature of inaction. And as always, I mean, it brings about this profound question of what duty do we as citizens or as friends or as parents have when we are confronted with this type of just, for lack of a better word, evil. Had to take a second. When people do nothing, it pisses me off. It makes me so mad. So, as a cute little, I don't know, break from all of that intensity, look at this. Look at this. It's my logo. It's me, Tiff Unraveled on a coffee cup. My boyfriend got these for me. Multiple ones to keep at home because I'm terrible at keeping like dishes and stuff clean. And don't judge me. I work a lot and I'm trying to like, you know, talk to you guys and stuff too. So anyway, sometimes dishes stay in the dishwasher for a couple days. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And then one for like work and one for my mom. So anyway, here she is. She's so cute. She's so cute. We love her. This is why I can't sleep because I just drink coffee. Like, what time is it? 6 p.m.? Yeah. I drink coffee from 6 a.m. till, well, past now, because I'm sure I'll have another cup before I try to go to sleep and complain about my insomnia. Anyway, here we go. We're back into this terribleness. I'm so glad you guys are here with me though, because honestly, that's what I love about this is like having this community of people to like talk about these things with, like to vent about them and to share them and to bring awareness to them. And like, thank you. Okay. So that was my break. Here we are. All right. So where actually were we? I might have to go back a second. Hold tight. Okay, here we are. So while the investigation remains active, right? Because I need you guys to understand that, okay, we'll get into it. See, I get ahead of myself. The St. Pete Police Department have stated that at present, right, we were just talking about Pam and all these witnesses that knew all this stuff and did fucking nothing. Only Gress and Brandy's have been charged in this case. However, a criminal defense attorney unaffiliated with the case. Her name is Shayna Bailey. She actually commented that criminal liability for witnesses could actually be a future consideration in this case for law enforcement, depending on, quote, what these people knew, when they knew it, and how they knew it, unquote. Let's get into the unraveling, shall we? That's why we're here. While Miranda Corsette was being murdered, the outside world in general, aside from those few fuckheads we talked about, remained oblivious. But a series of events, starting with her grandmother's official report and then culminating in a domestic dispute involving a harpoon, a harpoon, bring the horrors of 27th Avenue North to light. So here's where we're going to get into that welfare check, okay, that I mentioned earlier and then skipped over a little bit. So the official timeline of the police investigation begins on February 24th, 2025, right? That is the day that Miranda's grandmother, I mean, I know she was hoping for a timely return, but at that point that had faded, and she formally reported her missing to the Gulfport Police Department. By this point, investigators believe that Miranda, unfortunately, was already taken. Just one day later, on February 25th, what I think would be or would have been a very critical opportunity to uncover the crime was very tragically missed, unfortunately. The couple's landlord, right, David Horton, became concerned. He received this bizarre text message from Stephen Gress. In this text message, Gress stated that, quote, someone suffered a bodily injury in the home. That was his text to his landlord, but then attempted to downplay it by a text just a few minutes later, adding that everything, quote, was now cool, unquote. Horton was disturbed by this message, right, as anybody would be, and he actually did call the police at this point and requested a welfare check at this duplex. St. Petersburg police confirmed that officers did actually visit the house that day, which was 5 days after they believed the beating and the torture of Miranda began. However, their efforts were thwarted. Thwarted. That's a fun word. That's a cool word to say. As one report stated, their, quote, hands were tied because nobody was home at the time, unquote. The landlord, David Horton, would later reflect on this moment with some pretty profound regret. And he stated, quote, we had the police come out here and they went in there and they said, oh, no, there's nothing wrong in this apartment. Well, they were dead wrong. I think about that one, unquote. It was a near miss, honestly, that probably could have changed everything, but the closed door and empty apartment allowed the crime to remain hidden at that time. After the failed welfare check, the case went cold for over a week. The final unraveling begins, not with the murder investigation, but with another instance of the couple's infamous signature domestic volatility, what they were known for. On March the 5th, 2025, the police were once again called to the duplex on 27th Avenue North. This time, they arrested Stephen Gress. The charges were for possessing drugs and, most notably, for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, for pointing an air-powered harpoon gun at Michelle Brandes during an argument at the duplex. Surveillance video from a neighbor's ring or whatever, one of those cameras, actually captured this arrest, showing Stephen Gress being taken into custody. So, with Gress now behind bars on these completely unrelated charges, the crucial tip that would connect him to Miranda's disappearance finally surfaces, right? I feel like whoever sent this tip in, it's so weird. Again, God, I know I said this about Stephen Stearns too, but And maybe I'll do it tonight just because I have the time and what I feel like the energy. That could change so rapidly though, because we're in our 40s now and that's not always sustainable, the energy. But the interrogation, right? He doesn't look like that scary of a dude, but when you hear him talk about the stuff that he like does to Miranda and stuff, I'm like, dude, you're fucked up. He's and so to hear this neighbor, or I don't know if it was a neighbor, this tip that came in after he was arrested, in my head, it was like they were waiting for him to be like off the streets before they were like, hey, by the way, this guy did this also. Because like I feel like, did they wait for that to happen because they were afraid of him? This dude is not a he is not a good guy. He's not even a decent guy. He's not even an okay guy. The fact that this guy is off the streets right now is a relief, apparently, even to so many people in his own community. And like that speaks volumes. Love law enforcement and like getting this person off the streets because apparently people were just terrified of him. I don't know. Okay, we can get into that later. So again, this tip, once he was arrested on these unrelated charges, this tip came in, right? On March 6th, this was the day that it happened. A witness contacted police with information about a possible kidnapping and homicide involving a missing teenager. And this was the break that investigators needed. And from that point on, I mean, they very quickly connected the dots between their jailed suspect and the missing girl from Gulfport. The investigation moved very quickly from that point on. On March 7th, 2025, police officially charged the incarcerated Stephen Gress with the first-degree murder and kidnapping of Miranda Corsette. At the same time, they announced publicly that they were actively searching for his partner, Michelle Brandis, and issued a warrant at that time for her arrest. But that manhunt was very short-lived, because the following day, March 8th, 2025, Michelle Brandy surrendered herself to the St. Petersburg police, and she was taken into custody and also charged with first-degree murder. So now we have our suspects in custody, right? The investigation takes on like this very grim task. And the task is finding Miranda. Where is she? Where is Miranda? The story that emerged was one of a very calculated and very gruesome disposal of Miranda. A journey across county lines designed to erase a human being. A plan that was tragically successful. It was successful, and this kills me. This part kills me. For Miranda's family, there would be no body, no grave to visit, and no final goodbye. After murdering Miranda in their St. Petersburg duplex, Stephen Gress and Michelle Brandes began a very meticulous and horrific process to dispose of her body and to destroy evidence. They first placed her body in a car and drove from their home in St. Petersburg, Florida, to a second location, a house located on Mallory Drive in Largo in Pinellas County, Florida. This was not even a random choice. Get this. The house belonged to Michelle Brandy's mother. The use of a secondary, clean location for the most gruesome part of their plan also demonstrates to me a very chilling level of criminal foresight on their part. This is like a classic tactic, right? To avoid leaving significant forensic evidence at the primary crime scene. It was in the home of his partner's mother that Stephen Gress dismembered Miranda's body. Largo police detectives would later find physical evidence at the house on Mallory Drive, and it confirmed that this horrific act had taken place there. One report citing the affidavit alleges that he used a chainsaw to carry out this dismemberment. The disposal plan involved crossing county lines, another tactic, right, that can be used by perpetrators to complicate and really slow down police investigations. After dismembering Miranda's body, the couple placed her remains into trash bags and drove from Largo across the bay into neighboring Hillsborough County. Their destination was a dumpster located in the town of Ruskin, Florida, and they disposed of the bags there, hoping that they would be lost forever amongst the refuse. Initially, investigators were able to track their movements. Detectives very successfully located the very specific dumpster that the couple had used, and this sparked a very frantic search for Miranda's remains. The initial belief was that her body was likely buried deep within some landfill, and then this massive recovery effort was contemplated by law enforcement. But on March 13th, 2025, St. Petersburg Police Department delivered the final devastating update in this case. Their investigation had confirmed the worst possible outcome here. The trash from the Ruskin dumpster had been collected and transported to the Falkenberg Transfer Center, and from there it was taken to the county's waste to energy incinerator. Miranda Corsette's body, they were sure at that point, had been irrevocably destroyed. There would be no recovery, there would be no physical evidence of her remains, and there would be no final resting place for her family to mourn her. With Miranda's body most likely gone forever, the case against Stephen Gress and Michelle Brandes would have to be built on all of the other evidence, right? On witness statements, on confessions from the two, on forensics gathered from the two homes, their home in St. Petersburg and the mother of Michelle's home in Largo, and then on this digital trail of texts and photos. As this case moves towards trial, the two people who acted together to kill a teenage girl are, like I stated before, now completely turning on each other. They are each fighting for their own life as they face the ultimate penalty, as they should face the ultimate penalty, not turn on each other. Both Stephen Gress and Michelle Brandes are facing the most serious charges possible under Florida state law. They have each been charged with the first-degree murder and kidnapping of Miranda Corsette. Gress is also facing his prior charges of aggravated assault for this harpoon incident and drug possession. He has officially entered a plea of not guilty to the murder and kidnapping charges. The gravity of their alleged crimes means that both of these defendants are facing the death penalty if they are convicted of these crimes. They are currently both incarcerated in the Pinellas County jail system, and they are both held without bond as they await their trial. So in a very significant legal development, right? This just happened last week, July 22nd, 2025. Pinellas County judge ruled that Stephen Gress and Michelle Brandes would be tried separately. So this motion to sever the trials was granted because the two defendants are known, as I stated earlier, and said we'd come back to, right? They have what is known as antagonistic defenses. In a legal context, this means that the core of each defendant's strategy is to blame the other of the crime. So a joint trial would be inherently prejudicial, right? Because each defendant would essentially act as a second prosecutor against the other. The defense strategies are in direct conflict with one another. So Stephen Gress's defense, right? his account given to police portrays Michelle Brandes as the primary aggressor, especially in the final moments of Miranda's life. He specifically claims that Michelle Brandes was the one who suffocated the teenager by shoving the billiard ball into her throat and wrapping her face in plastic. And then on the other hand, we have Michelle Brandes for her defense, right? Her legal team, I think her lawyer's name is Jenna Finkelstein or Finkelstein. I'm not sure. Finkelstein. Jenna plans to argue that Brandes was herself a victim, which she very much tries to portray herself as during her police interviews. That is an insane embarking on its own. We gotta do that. The defense's strategy in Michelle Brandes' case is to claim that she was coerced into participating, right? That she was too afraid of being like beaten and harmed by the violent and intimidating Stephen Gress to either stop him or to report the crime to police, which she had many opportunities to do, by the way. Many opportunities to do. Anyway, the prosecutor in both cases, he's the assistant state attorney. His name is Juan, I don't want to butcher this, Juan Saldivar. He has made the state's position very clear. He believes that Gress and Brandes are equally culpable for Miranda's murder. So with the trials now separated, Pinellas County Judge Philip Federico, what a cool name, noted that the primary question now is, quote, who dips their toes in first, unquote, indicating that the order of the trials has yet to be determined. And so here we are. Right. This very brutal nature of Miranda Corsette's murder, particularly the role that a dating app played in her being lured to Gress and Brandes, sent shockwaves through the St. Petersburg community and prompted action from local authorities. In direct response to this case, the St. Petersburg Police Department began hosting a series of in-person public forums designed to educate parents and children about the dangers of online predators and to promote internet safety, which I love because if you know me, I love a space for advocacy and awareness. And this is so important. Internet safety, come on. This is like the biggest issue right now. Everything is online. Everyone is online. And it is our duty to try to find every single way possible that we can to protect our children from the dangers that are lurking, just waiting for these vulnerable individuals to make their way to them. It's terrifying. God, our world is scary. It's so scary. The case has also moved to the civil arena because court records also indicate that Miranda Corsette's family has filed a lawsuit against Grindr, which is the dating app that Gress used to contact her, seeking to hold the company accountable in her death. They're basically saying that there's not enough age verification processes and things to safeguard children who are getting onto this app and then being lured by these predators. And I tend to agree. So as this legal process moves forward, the next pretrial hearing for the defendants is scheduled soon. The community is just left to really grapple with the knowledge of the evil that transpired in this ordinary duplex on, you guessed it, 27th Avenue North. A family is left to mourn the loss of this beautiful young girl and mother. She did have this life so full of challenges, and it was cut short by this unimaginable cruelty with absolutely no. In these cases where there's no body, it's just so hard for me to imagine there being any closure, having your loved one brought home to you. Not having that, I can't even imagine the pain that her family is enduring right now, especially as the trial moves forward. and you don't even have your loved one back home with you to bury, right? To have a place to visit and somewhere to mark her memory. My heart and my thoughts go out to Miranda Corsette's family and loved ones, especially as trial approaches. So I will keep you guys posted. This will probably be the next trial that I cover. It was going to be Stephen Stearns followed by Brian Kober, but those are no longer on the agenda anymore. And so I think that this one is coming up I think it's coming up in August. I don't think there's a set date, but I think that everything that I'm reading is suggesting that August will be the start of one of their trials. And so we're going to follow it. We're going to talk about it. I want you guys to let me know how you feel, what you think, as usual. I'm sorry it took so long for me to get back here. But I'm just glad that you're here with me now. Yes. Until I see you guys again next time, please, God, please stay safe. Keep asking questions and keep unraveling. Love you.